I didn't think the pain from the shingles rash would affect simple, everyday tasks like bathing, getting dressed, or even walking around. I was wrong. Though not everyone at risk will develop it, 99% of people over the age of 50 already have the virus that causes shingles, and it could reactivate at any time. I developed it, and the blistering rash lasted for weeks. Don't learn the hard way, like I did. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today. Sponsored by GSK.
Hey, if you're listening to this, you probably just finished Alabama Media Group's amazing podcast, American Shrapnel. I'm Rebecca Everett. I'm a reporter at their sister news site, NJ.com. And I'm dropping into your feed with the first episode of our new podcast series. Someone's Hunting Us is the story of a serial killer you've never heard of and the women who took him down. We worked so hard reporting this important story. So here's the first episode of Someone's Hunting Us. And if you like it, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Once again, a bomb in the night. Once again, a second bomb discovered after the first one goes off. It happened outside a lesbian club called the Otherside.
I'm Memrie Cresswell, and living in Cumming, Georgia, and was involved in the 1997 Otherside bombing. It was a friend of mine's birthday that night, and we had gone out to a Mexican place, and then they begged me to go to the other side for a little while, and so I agreed to go because it was her birthday. And we got there about 9:30, and they were shooting pool, and I was sitting on at a high top table on a stool facing the bar and had a little short shirt on. And so I kept standing up and tucking my shirt in because it was driving me nuts. And the pool table was behind me, and my friend was shooting pool, and she said, "Hey, Memrie, watch this shot." So when I stood up to tuck my shirt in, I turned around to watch the shot.
It was one of those moments that should have been nothing. Tying your shoe, ordering pizza, sliding behind the wheel of your car, stepping off the curb into the street.
It was the kind of moment that ought to just fade, the kind not worth holding on to. But for Memrie Cresswell, after that night, nothing was the same.
And that's when the bomb blast went off, and it hit me. I had a 4-inch concrete nail blown through the back of my right upper arm, and it came out my chest, and it punctured my brachial artery. And I initially thought I had been shot. My friends rushed in front of me, and I thought that people had shot in through the windows, and I didn't know anything had happened at first. And all of a sudden I started sweating really bad, and then I had this really overwhelming cold feeling go over me, and I looked down and there was blood spurting out of my arm. And so I grabbed my friend and I said, "I think I've been shot." And about that time I couldn't breathe, like I couldn't catch my breath. And she was like, "Oh my gosh." And my friend was a dental hygienist, and she took her purse strap, and of course, people were freaking out, just running over us and jumping over us. And she took her purse strap to try to do a tourniquet on my arm because she saw how much blood I was losing. By then, I was having a hard time breathing. I couldn't keep my consciousness. And she was screaming, "Somebody please call the ambulance, call 911, and nobody was paying attention. People were just running towards the door, not knowing that there was another bomb in the parking lot.
Hi, I'm Becca Andrews.
And I'm John Archibald. This is American Shrapnel, a story of rage and violence in the name of righteousness, of death in the name of life.
But it's not just one man's story. It's also the story of the people who bore the brunt of his anger. The people targeted by the extremists that molded Eric Rudolph, that drove him to kill.
It's the story, thank goodness, of a bad bomber. Eric Rudolph had been frustrated, time after time, by luck or fate or busybodies or bureaucrats or gravity itself. So his well-laid plans for mass destruction failed to deliver the scale of devastation he envisioned.
Some might call those interventions miracles, others coincidence.
Remember July 27th, 1996? The bomb that morning at Centennial Park in Atlanta started it all.
That pipe bomb killed Alice Hawthorne right in front of her teenage daughter. It also triggered a fatal heart attack for a photojournalist. Shrapnel wounded 111 people, which is a lot, but it could have been so much worse.
Worse was Rudolph's intention. At 12:58 in the morning, as revelers filled the park to celebrate one of the proudest moments in the South's history, Rudolph dialed 911 from a bank of payphones.
You have 30 minutes.
The bomb exploded in 20.
Rudolph told the feds he had called 911 earlier, but he had to call back because an operator hung up on him. But David Namias, the U.S. attorney in Atlanta at the time, calls bullshit. He thinks Rudolph just wanted to kill cops.
He clearly was trying to hurt people, but there was no need to make a warning call. I mean, the only purpose of a warning call, particularly one that says you have 30 minutes when you only have 20 minutes, is to get a law enforcement response. And that's what he got.
That was the largest pipe bomb ever found in the United States at that time.
Mike Wisenan has been studying that bomb for years, using a model of it to teach federal agents about bomb construction and components.
It used black powder, which is a relatively low-power explosive. It used some standard things you see in most bombs, like a Big Ben alarm clock.
That's a wind-up clock like you see in the cartoons, with the bells on top. They look like cymbals or Mickey Mouse ears.
It used 8-penny nails as shrapnel, but it had a unique aspect to it too. It had a piece of metal, a 1/8-inch steel metal, that was used as sort of a directional device. If you're familiar with a Claymore mine, Claymore mines are designed to shoot shrapnel in one direction. This bomb was also designed to shoot shrapnel in one direction. Was very unusual in the United States. Probably less than 5% of all bombs found would have that.
It was put under the TV tower, aimed toward the stage. I think there were about 10,000 people in that pit area in front of the stage. And so, the clear design was to shoot shrapnel through a crowd of people.
The steel plate was designed to kill. It was designed to spray nails like a wall of shrapnel directly into the crowd. And you could still see the impact of those nails in a bronze sculpture in the park near the spot where Alice Hawthorne died. The two of us visited the park and we stood where she stood, and we ran our hands over the scars on the statue. It is emotional.
Rudolph put his bomb in an Army Alice pack and hid it beneath a park bench before he called 911. A security guard named Richard Jewell famously spotted that pack, and he wasn't the only one.
Between the time he left the bag and the time Richard Jewell spotted it, this group of kids who were working at the Speedo tent came by. They had been drinking, and they saw the backpack. Some of them thought it might have something they could steal or some alcohol in it. And one of them kind of kicked it, and it tipped over.
That would turn out to be a lucky break.
Jewell's life was turned upside down when he was wrongly vilified as a suspect. But now, in Centennial Park, he has a monument of his own.
Jewell had already found the device, trying to think, maybe right around, or maybe even a minute or two before the call was made. He called the bomb techs. There's a story there. There was an ATF and FBI guy, I think. And when we interviewed them, they said they'd responded to 1 million suspicious packages in their career, including a bunch at the Olympics, and they'd never seen an actual bomb. And the one guy, they crawl up to it and they kind of open it up. He puts his flashlight and sees these giant pipes wrapped in nails with a battery, and backs off fast and says, I was freaked out. And so they start calling in law enforcement to get the crowd back. And so a lot of the most severely injured people in the Centennial Park bombing were actually law enforcement agents hit with shrapnel, in their back, as they were literally pushing people back. And so our theory was, the target was, he would be happy just causing a sensation and killing a lot of people, but law enforcement was certainly a target.
Let's go back to those Speedo boys. That moment of hooliganism, of temptation, may have saved a ton of lives. They knocked the bomb over, so the steel plate directed the nails on a less lethal path.
And so it tipped on its back, and most of the shrapnel shot up instead of out. But for that, you might have had 1,000 people injured and 100 killed.
Those were two pretty remarkable strokes of luck. Rudolph could not have been happy. All of that effort, all of that risk, all of that opportunity for attention. For a guy who built his own Claymore mine with black powder and construction supplies, things did not go the way he planned.
Rudolph would change some things before he bombed again.
174 days after the Olympic bombing, on the morning of January 17th, 1997, 2 bombs rocked a family planning clinic in the northern Atlanta suburbs. It was a clear escalation, both in bomb construction and tactics.
But again, what seems like dumb luck saved lives at that clinic in Sandy Springs.
Bombers evolve over time. They learn, and they unfortunately get better at what they do. In the Sandy Springs bomb, we see for the first time that he uses a decoy bomb, one bomb that was planted next to the building that had no shrapnel in it. Then he planted a second bomb that was outside in the parking lot that again had the metal plate in it, and it was directed into the parking lot. And it was set to detonate shortly after the first bomb. As the IRA learned many years ago, you have a first bomb that's designed to bring first responders into an area, and a second bomb to kill those responders. And that's what this bomb was designed to do.
But again, it didn't work. Not the way it was supposed to. Because somebody, Wisnett remembers a fire chief and Namias remembers a methadone patient, parked their car at the corner of the parking lot right next to the second bomb.
And it absorbed virtually all the blast and the shrapnel. There were some people who were injured from the blast effect, but no one was killed.
Reporters were actually on the scene when the second bomb went off. You can hear it happening here.
Where were you in the building and where was the explosion? Oh my God!
This second explosion, about an hour later, injured a television photographer, an ATF agent, and at least 4 others.
One by one, the bombs escalated. In the days after the Olympics, Rudolph decided he needed more powerful explosives, so he set his sights on dynamite stored at the Austin Powder Company in Asheville, North Carolina.
He got the dynamite after doing COP, Centennial Olympic Park, because that's why he made the switch from black powder to dynamite.
This is Paul Kish, a lawyer who would later represent Rudolph in Georgia. Rudolph told him all about how he smuggled dynamite from the company at night, trip after trip, across cold water.
He says, yeah, that damn river is cold. So I'd load up my Alice backpack, with like 20 pounds, dynamite in the middle of the night, and there's goddamn slippery rocks. I'm thinking, I got dynamite on my back. I better be firm with each step.
We don't know if he had help, inside or out. But in his writings, Rudolph claims he staked out the company and found no security. He scaled its barbed wire fence, drilled out 2 locks, and made his way inside. He packed dynamite in his backpack and carried it back over the fence, across a cow pasture in the snow, in 5 separate loads. It was risky stuff, dangerous. But in a way, having all that dynamite saved his life.
We'll get back to that. For now, let's return to how Rudolph's bombs escalated.
And we see also a graduation of explosive, okay? The first bomb in the Olympics used that black powder I mentioned. The next bombs, the Birmingham bomb, used nitroglycerin-based dynamite. So it is a higher order of explosive. Again, the bomber's growing. He's learning. And he did not accomplish his goals, I don't believe, at the first bombings. So in the second bombing, he wanted to make sure that he accomplished his goal, that is, killing people.
A little more than a month after the Sandy Springs attack, Rudolph planted 2 bombs outside a lesbian bar in the Atlanta suburbs, the Otherside Lounge.
Memrie Cresswell was injured by the first bomb. But that attack also could have been much worse.
One of the FBI says, I want to show you a trajectory of the diagram from where the shrapnel came in, where the nail came in. And they said, had you been sitting down at that table where you'd been all night long at the high top table facing that bar, where that nail came in, it would have gone straight through your head. But because you stood up and turned around, it went through the back of your shoulder. So the trajectory changed. I mean, it would have killed me had I been sitting there. And that, I was saved. I was saved for a reason.
After Cresswell was hit, patrons ran outside, not knowing that other bomb was out there. Fortunately, agents found it and detonated it with a robot. It was one hell of an explosion.
When they were trying to disable the second bomb and it went off, that piece of steel got shot out, folded in half, almost like a piece of bread, went about a quarter mile, went through the gutter of a house, and landed inside the front door.
We keep saying it could have been worse, and it could have been. Lord knows that Rudolph wanted to kill so many more people than he was able to. But don't mistake a lack of death for a lack of impact. Memrie Cresswell has suffered for years, physically and emotionally. So have her family and friends.
You're impacted by that for the rest of your life, So it scars you. I didn't go a lot of places anyway. And so I was very cautious not to do that so that I wouldn't be exposed to that anyway. But I was very fearful. And PTSD was rampant at the time. I was drinking a lot. I was doing a lot of destructive things at the time and desperately needed therapy because of that. I was, going in and out of relationships more than I should and very unhealthy.
She says nearly dying at a lesbian bar led to public discussion of her sexuality and cost her job. It was hell for a conservative woman from the Mississippi Delta.
Well, they outed me to the whole world. I mean, I had friends in Australia that saw my name on the news. They were seeing it on CNN. So everybody in the whole world knew at that point. And so there was no hiding any more of that. Everybody knew. And my mother was embarrassed. My family was embarrassed.
It was freaking horrible. But it wasn't enough for Rudolph. So then came Birmingham.
So that's why he went to a remote control device. So it was an evolution for him. And so he's using a more powerful explosive, he's using dynamite, and he's using a remote control device to set off the bomb.
Rudolph hid behind a tree in Birmingham, you may recall. He pushed the button as off-duty police officer Sandy Sanderson walked over to examine the camouflaged bomb. Sanderson was killed. Nurse Emily Lyons was maimed so severely she's had to have more than 50 surgeries.
I think he wanted to make sure he got somebody in Birmingham. And, in many ways, it's even more horrific than setting off a bomb with 50,000 people in the park and 10,000 probably within range, to actually watch somebody stand over a bomb and set it off in their face.
And that's what keeps coming up for people. What kind of guy, in the name of life itself, builds bigger and better bombs to kill more people? What kind of a person stands in the shadows behind a tree to kill a cop and maim a woman at a distance with the push of a button?
He's evil. I think he's evil. I think he has no respect for life. I think he has no respect for people. I think he's evil. He doesn't deserve to be here.
But I know this. I know it was designed to kill people. It wasn't designed just to destroy a clinic. It was designed to kill somebody who was ever in its way.
That's Senator Doug Jones, U.S. Attorney in the Northern District of Alabama at the time.
But he was waiting and was going to make a conscious decision to kill somebody that was going into that clinic. And it just so happened that Sandy found it, and it was him and Emily standing near the door. I get chills thinking about it. He has no soul. He is nothing but pure evil. I can't say that enough.
James Blanton is the Birmingham cop who interviewed Jermaine Hughes, the witness who changed everything.
And a lot of times it doesn't take somebody really tough or bad to kill somebody. It's pulling a 5-pound trigger out of emotions. This is plotting. This is cold-blooded. I know what I'm gonna do. This is not emotions. That's different. This guy here is cold and calculating.
Diane Durzis, the owner of the New Woman All-Women Clinic, said you could see the physical effects of the bomb even up until the clinic was torn down a few years ago.
By the next day, they had the pink threads up that showed the view of all of the shrapnel and where it came from. And I mean, that was the thing. When you went in and saw that they went to actual chairs, I mean, it would be like you'd see it going right towards that pillar. It was aimed in the middle of each one of those. Staff would have been in, and patients would have been in. And Sandy, the security guard, who was also a Birmingham policeman, when he was blown apart, he landed on the brick wall, and the blood, when we tried to clean that off, never completely erased. And the pieces of his uniform, just thousands of pieces, threads, came up for years afterwards every time it would rain.
Scott Morrow is a lawyer now, but at the time he was a Birmingham cop and head of security for New Woman All Women. He was Sandy Sanderson's boss. Sanderson was not scheduled to work that morning, but he filled in for another officer. Here's how Scott remembers Sandy.
Sandy was unique. He was not from Alabama either. Hard worker, rough around the edges, tatted up, but a kind person. But it was a difficult place to work, and probably the hardest place to work in the United States at the time with all the protesting. And it was difficult to be a police officer there, you know.
Now, Scott and Sandy had talked about things like poking packages, and he shouldn't have done it. But that may have saved lives too.
You know, but if Sandy hadn't have done that, they would have been Emily would have opened the door. There would have been people lined up waiting, and it would have been a lot worse. People killed.
But it's not just the people who were physically injured. Rudolph's bombs changed the life of paramedics, nurses, cops, even bystanders. Chris Edson was on the scene of the Birmingham bombing. He's still haunted by the feeling that he could have done more to help Sandy and Emily.
It was a normal day, and then it was, not. I mean, it was something that really kind of, I guess, changed my life in a way. I mean, it's definitely a formative kind of thing that is part of who I am, I guess, now. Just coming to terms with the feeling of helplessness, of being unprepared, in a way, like the experience told me how, nobody knows how they'd respond in situations like that. And I didn't. I like to think that I would respond in a responsible way, but all that stuff is, it's such a visceral kind of thing. And just coming to terms with that I wasn't prepared, and that I did freeze. It wasn't for that long. But then after that, I carried around gloves, and I carried around like a CPR face mask for years in my car. I didn't want to be, if something did happen again, I wasn't going to respond the same way.
Edson followed the manhunt for Rudolph for years, and that day at the clinic still affects him.
And then little things like when Saving Private Ryan came out, it was not that far. It was, I don't know if it was a year after. 2 years, I think. Yeah, but seeing it and then just like, I mean, I was bawling like a baby, and I know it's a powerful movie by itself, but I mean, I was thinking about the blast the whole time.
And Emily Lyons herself. She has no memory of that horrific day in January of 98, but thousands of moments of pain she'd gladly forget. She remembers the summer of that year when the FBI came to her door.
I learned who had done it and how they did it. They said it was remote controlled. I just started crying. I said, so somebody actually stood there and watched the destruction that they caused that day. Rudolph was across the street behind the tree, kind of like a coward, and he pushed the button. I'd never known anyone to have that much hate, destruction, wanting to kill, as he did, knowing that he pushed the button. And the destruction just went from there.
Lyons refuses to call herself a victim. She is a survivor. She knows the bomb that killed Sandy and forever changed her life was the result of Rudolph's repeated attempts to make his bombs more lethal to more and more people.
Forgiveness for Lyons is out of the question, but there is some satisfaction.
He didn't get what he wanted. He wanted more people there that day. I think there would have been about 8 patients and probably 4 other staff members that day that he wanted to get, along with Sandy. Because it was aimed at the front door. He would have pushed that button, killed all of them.
Bombs don't discriminate. The shrapnel hit everything in its path, including people who Rudolph might actually agree with on a lot of issues. Memrie Cresswell wonders why he'd rather blow her up than listen to her.
The funny thing is, what he doesn't realize is even though I have a certain lifestyle that he might not like, I'm conservative. I have conservative beliefs just like he does. I'm probably voting for the same people that he's voting for, which is odd. He doesn't realize that if he took the time to get to know some of the people that he was out hurting or having certain feelings for, he might align with them. He might like them. He might soften his hearts to certain people, if he just got to know people.
She's had a lot of time to think about that, and she's fought hard to get herself into a better place.
Talking to her, it's impressive. She's impressive. But it's very clear that her fight isn't over and that it likely never will be.
I love to shoot guns. Go figure. I want to always be prepared for any circumstance. And I've trained with a guy that is a former, he's a veteran. He's a former police officer, and so he knows how to train me, right? And so I was in the gun range with him, and there was a guy that was testing another gun in another room, and it literally sounded like a cannon, and I lost it. I was shooting with him, and he was working with me. He's telling me things. He was like, "You're not paying attention," and it was like I couldn't. I needed to get out of there. I had to get out of there because it sounded like a bomb, like going off, and I just lost it. I couldn't catch my breath. I started shaking. I started crying, and he was like, "What is going on?" And then my mother was like, "It's PTSD. She lost it. I had to get out of there."
Next time on American Shrapnel, you'll hear more from Emily Lyons and Diane Durzis, firebrands who for decades stared down a violent movement that believes anything to end abortion is justifiable, even murder.
American Shrapnel is a production of Alabama Media Group. It was written and hosted by me, Becca Andrews.
And me, John Archibald. Our co-creator and executive producer is John Hammontree.
This episode was engineered by Daniel Potter. Our field producer is Sarah Whites-Koditscheck, and our social media producers are Caroline Vincent and Mila Olivera. Our logo and cover art were designed by Jack Browning.
Challen Stevens is our editor-in-chief. Consulting producers Dan Carson and Ashley Rimkus provided valuable feedback. The song you're hearing right now is Birmingham by Beth Thornley and Rob Cairns. This episode also featured their song, Everyone Falls.
Special thanks to Memrie Cresswell, David Namias, Mike Wisenant, Paul Kish, Doug Jones, James Blanton, Diane Durzis, Scott Morrow, Chris Edson, and Emily Lyons. Thanks also to Catherine Oseas-Champion and the Birmingham Public Library.
If you like our show, please leave us a rating and review and follow us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app.
Thanks for listening.